I think the number one problem or challenge or area of improvement for young people these days is that look, all the information is available everywhere, especially with technology, with developments, with all the resources that you have around you. Everything is readily available. The challenge is that we don't like reading, and sometimes it's as simple as just going on Google and asking Google the question, hey, what is this threshold for lodging a tax return, or what is the threshold, minimum threshold that I don't have to pay taxes?
Ali is a Tanzania-born and Darwin-based serial entrepreneur, a mentor for young people and an inspiration for many. Meet the man behind Samaf, Kindness Shake, and Top End Maintenance. Specializing in multilingual accounting and business strategy, Ali helps small businesses, nonprofits, and everyday people thrive.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all about faith and hope, right? And belief. If you don't believe in yourself and if you don't have the faith that it's going to work out, then it's just going to be hard. And the three or two things that I always tell people, that if you're doing the right thing and if you're going to be helping people out, then I don't think so you need to be worried about anything.
Most people don't make it to this part of the podcast. So if you have, thank you. Thanks a lot. It means a lot to me. Ali, who you're going to be listening to for the next hour and a half or so, has one of the quotes he goes by, which is, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So today, finally, I'm going to ask you that please watch the episode, and if you benefit from it, if you like it, please leave a like and subscribe. It's a free way of supporting what Young and Curious is doing. We will speak to the people you want us to speak to and keep producing better content every single time. I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you. Ali, thank you for being on. For anyone who doesn't know what you do, what do you do, and who do you do it for?
Thank you, Abhi. I'm very happy to be on here. I'm an accountant in very layman's terms for people, to make it easier. I do books, I do numbers. That's my forte. But most importantly, I do it for people who cannot do it themselves. I'm in the business to work with people who are vulnerable, to work with people who are young, to work with people who come from a different background, and also do it for people who cannot understand it in English, particularly. So we are able to do it in 15 different languages. And I personally can do it in 7.
And what are those 7 languages?
I speak English just because I studied in an English medium school across all my education. I do speak Swahili because I lived in Africa all my life. I speak Lingala because I spent a little bit of time in Congo. I do speak Arabic. I can read and write Arabic because of the religion and the Quran and stuff like that. I speak Urdu, Hindi, from my mom's side, obviously, and a little bit of Gujarati and Kutchi and Sindhi. So yeah, a little bit of a mix of everything.
Impressive.
Thank you.
What is a common misconception about accountants that people have in their mind?
That we're very boring, but we're not. We're actually very fun people.
Well, clearly not.
If there's this ZeroCon happening in September, that is all of excitement and a lot of fun. Especially with the recent developments with AI coming into play, with young people being interested into the industry now. I think the misconception was that the accountants are always behind the desk wearing bigger glasses, just a little bit old with their tummy out. But no, we try keep fit and healthy, and we're fun people.
Brilliant. And you say that you do a lot for young people. What is it about young people that they don't currently understand, and it's a big thing that they don't know about accounting or doing their taxes or anything like that?
I think the number one problem or challenge or area of improvement for young people these days is that look, all the information is available everywhere, especially with technology, with developments, with all the resources that you have around you. Everything is readily available. The challenge is that we don't like reading. And sometimes it's as simple as just going on Google and asking Google the question, hey, what is this threshold for lodging a tax return, or what is the threshold, minimum threshold that I don't have to pay taxes for? And that is what I've noticed over the past many, many years of my studies in Darwin and across Australia pretty much. And that is where we try and tap in, the videos that we see that we do, the information sessions that we conduct. I mostly start that by saying that all of this information is available online, but we just make it easier and put it out there. So while it is an area of improvement for many young people, it's also an opportunity for other young people to tap into it and tap into the market.
And was that the idea behind starting Samaf?
Good question. The idea behind starting Samaf was firstly and most importantly was that freedom. That matters a lot. It's one of my biggest values. And secondly, it's about giving back. The only way, and Samaf started during COVID. At that time, we had lost our jobs. We were international students, so we didn't have any government support or anything like that for many of us. And it's during that time when we started the Kindness Shake, and I was part of, forming that not-for-profit. But that's when Samaf started, because the only thing I had at that time was my knowledge and my skills. That's it. I had no money to give anyone. I didn't have a place to stay because I was sharing with many people. It's student life. We didn't have a lot of food because we used to get it free from the Kindness Shake. So the only thing that I had at that time was my education and my skills. And I wanted to do something for the community. And that's when Samaf started, as an accounting firm, to just give back to our community the skills that we had been taught for many, many years in the education that we studied, but also the industry that we worked in. And that's how it started. And as soon as we started, it just so happened, and we're very grateful for it, that the CDU tax clinic fell right into our hands. And it just resonated with what we did, why we did it, and who we did it for.
Education and skills.
That's right.
Something no one can take from you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most fulfilling thing about having Samaf?
I think it's the people that you work with. The two main stakeholders at Samaf is our clients and our team members. We have a range of small businesses, big businesses, but talking about my team members, we have had over 75 people go through Samaf and now are established in their careers, either working with us or doing other things around Australia, actually. And the most fulfilling thing is when you see them achieving their goals. When you hear someone, because I've gone through the whole process and I know a lot of young people and a lot of international students go through it, is you finish your degree, you have your graduation, which obviously everyone goes through, an exciting thing, obviously. And then you get your TR, again, another, excitement thing. And then you get your nomination, your PR, your citizenship. So that is a whole journey that I am so, so grateful to be part of 75 people. And over the past 4 or 5 years that we've been in business, to be able to see that joy that comes from achieving those things and knowing that you have been part of that journey, because that is something that no one can take away from me, regardless of whatever happens. And it's something that's going to stay with me, but also all those other people for the rest of their lives, and that, I think that's the most important part.
It's, and I might not even keep this on, but it's really beautiful to see your community spirit.
Yeah, it's important because I think it's firstly the area or the environment that I grew up in. I grew up in Tanzania, in the middle of community. My mom and dad were both community workers, were both volunteers till today. They still do it. My dad is very, very sick, but I'm sure he still helps out as much as he can. And I think that is where it comes from. It's nothing that is just built in or comes magically as soon as I came in Darwin. I think it all comes from where I come from and from the upbringing that my parents gave me.
That's beautiful. And that clearly has resonated with you in being a co-founder in Kindness Shake and also building up life of so many people. In this podcast, there might be instances where I also have a few suggested questions for you from someone we both mutually know. And we both mutually know lots of people. And someone has suggested me ask this question. I'm not going to tell you what the question is and when I ask it, but just for the viewers, it's going to be very interesting. Because Young and Curious is about involving as many people as I can and making the knowledge more accessible and public, which is one thing that you, of course, do. Let's talk about some things which people are getting wrong. They might be young, they might be working full time, And what is it that they're getting wrong about even small things as filing their taxes or big things as how their life is going?
Very
It's
good question.
it's a very broad
Broad
question, but like as I said, we can focus on just the beginning bit of the question first and slowly build it up onto the bigger, more philosophical things.
I'll try and make it as short as I can. And
Mm.
the one thing that I see, well, actually two things, and they kind of interrelate to each other. One is instant gratification and sense of urgency. These two things are something that is just a young people's behavior now.
Mhm.
Because if you need anything, you go online, you order it. You need food, you need resources, whatever you need, it's just so quick. And because of that lifestyle of getting everything so quick, we want everything in life quick. We want our returns really quick. Crypto, clearly, where everyone just wants to get their money really quick, which doesn't really happen for majority of people who invest in it. But again, it's one example where young people, or I would say anyone in this generation, that instant gratification and that sense of urgency sometimes is great, but sometimes it also costs us more than what we put in. And that's why I always say, and I remind myself like I remind everyone else, that delayed gratification is always better than that instant gratification.
Yeah. You have a choice every time. Oh, actually, when I think about it, yes. It's like, okay, you could either eat that burger now and feel really good, or just not eat it and feel better in the longer run.
That's right. And again, it's a very good point that you mentioned about choices, because sometimes you have to have that sense of urgency, and sometimes you can capitalize on it and take that opportunity. And a good example can be even this podcast, right? Like if you came up with the whole option at just that particular time and be like, we want to do it because there was that sense of urgency. I also had that sense of urgency as well, and kind of worked well and, blended in, and now we're here. On any other contrary example, like you mentioned about a burger, that would have not been the greatest scenario, right? So again, there's pros and cons with it. It's just where you make your choices.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Let's talk about the things that someone might be getting wrong in filing their taxes or with money. Let's start just focusing just on money for this bit of the podcast. What do you think is people that are what do you think is something that people are getting wrong constantly with their money? It might be as small as um not writing their expenses, work related expenses, or anything huge that I might not know.
I actually had the point in mind. I kind of like just lost it. In terms of that, what I have seen over the past number of years is that people, or anyone, I would say, have that. I kind of lost my point here. What was your question? Sorry. We can cut that. I just the last
In
part.
simple terms, what is it that people are
People
getting
make
wrong in
mistakes.
filing their taxes? Yeah, make mistakes or something that they're not doing.
Okay. Oof.
We can take a pause if you want.
Yeah, I forgot that part. I have it right in my head. Writing it down. And okay, yeah. So in answering that question about what young people can change, or what is the number one, situation right now with money, and I would say is that lifestyle is we spend money on what we want
Mhm.
rather than what we need, and what can then later result into passive income or anything like that. So that is the number one mistake that I've seen with people doing with money, is spending Afterpay, ZipPay, Amazon, Temu. You'd be surprised with the number of people that we see on a daily basis and go through their bank statements, and you see all these transactions come up and you're like, wow, you know. And it's good for me because I see that lifestyle and I see where they are at, and it teaches me what not to do, and is what I try and preach as much as I can. Again, look, I can't tell no people not to buy a new car or not to spend money, because those things make us happy as well in one way or the other, even though it's that instant gratification. Yeah, but that's okay.
Car is a delayed gratification.
That's right, So, well, trust me, man. Once you drive it, then it doesn't really matter whether it's I wouldn't say, of course, a Rolls Royce is better than a Toyota, but I wouldn't say that you would feel the same. But again, it just makes you feel really good, which is completely fine. But just being mindful about that, and just your spending habits, your lifestyle.
just a side question. It might not even add any value. But have you ever been in a Rolls Royce, driven around, or chauffeured, or anything?
Not in a Rolls Royce, no.
What's the best one?
So I've been lucky that I have had friends who own things like Bentleys and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and the rest. But again, if you don't own it, it doesn't really matter, right? It's good. It's a good ride. But I would love it if I had it right outside my house. Even if I didn't ride it.
Yeah. And you said that the main thing that people are getting wrong is where they're spending money on and instant gratification. And this is something that you see in people's bank statements and other stuff when you're filing their taxes. Okay. What is something else that has stood out to you?
In terms of
Average people's bank statements and seeing that,
Hmm.
or even filing their taxes, maybe like, that moment where you just go and think,
I think it's not prepping,
mhm,
not being prepared for many. It doesn't matter if you're from an international background or from a local background. It really, really doesn't matter.
mhm.
It's that lack of preparation. Someone comes to you for tax returns and may not even have his tax file number with him. So when I talk about lack of preparation, it comes from even there. And a very good example, I'm not going to name names, but I was having a meeting yesterday which was booked 2 weeks in advance with someone very, very high up in the industry, to help her out with her day-to-day taxes, and she didn't know her tax file number, which is a wow moment. But again, it was like, look, we listen, we don't judge, right?
Yeah.
It is what it is. But again, that lack of preparation. And imagine, a tax file number is just a small thing.
Mhm.
When you go further into it, it's about your income. If people have worked on ABN, they don't even know what they've earned on their business, because there's no separation between business bank account and personal bank account. And even if they have that income, they don't know what their expenses are. If it's business expenses or personal expenses, because it's not separated. So I think the key here is lack of preparation. And that is what we emphasize, people. And I think this podcast is going to be really good for most of the viewers, is whenever this comes out, I'm sure it's going to be 2-3 months prior to the financial year. And it's good to just be prepared from now before the financial year comes. We have till the 15th of July until you got to finalize your returns or
Yeah.
file your returns. Until then, it's a good time to just be prepared. Make sure you go into your MyGov, make sure you see all your income has been reported, to check all your super's been paid, to make sure that you're good with your taxes. There's the simple tax calculator online where you can just put in your income. It will give you an average of how much you have to pay. And that way you can do your financial planning. Because what I've seen over the years is a lot of people work so much the whole year, doing 2 or 3 jobs. And then once they file their returns, they end up paying $5,000 or $7,000. And the question is, why did I work so much? And that preparation that we are trying to talk about right now, 2-3 months in advance, would avoid you paying that money. But not only that, it would save you your time, because sometimes you don't have to do 3 jobs. You can still do 2 jobs and still make the same amount of money without paying any taxes. Well, I mean, like paying on top of what you have already paid.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Yeah,
So prepare and plan.
that's it. In advance, not on the 30th of June. That, now is the financial year. Oh, great. Let me just log into MyGov and see what I've earned. No, I think it's important to do it prior. And this is something that we do with a lot of our high-end clients,
Mhm.
is meet them every quarter just to review what their situation is. And if we can, take our professional advice, speak to our tax agent and see if he can suggest something, for them to be able to be prepared for.
Prepare and plan way ahead in advance. Brilliant. What's the difference between someone, let's say it's me, let's take my example, right? I work full time. What's the difference between me trying to file my taxes myself or coming to you to get it done?
It's like, well, if you put it in just simple terms like that, then there is no difference as such, because you would use your personal portal to lodge it.
Mhm.
I would use my agent portal to lodge it, right? You would still declare your income. I would still declare the income for you.
Mm.
You would still declare the same expenses.
Mm.
I would still declare the same expenses. But did you know about the zone overseas offset? No. And that is where you come to an accountant or a tax agent, or you attend the information sessions to find out about those key things. An example, and I'm sure that adding value is a key part of this podcast. And just to give away that if you've lived in the Northern Territory for over 12 months, there's a 338 offset, not a deduction. Now, you would probably have to see what the difference between an offset and a deduction is, but it's a $338 offset that you get for living in the territory for being a single individual. If you're here as a single mom or with a partner or with more kids, that offset increases in value. And that is not which everyone would know, right? So that is exactly why. That's one example. The second one is for international students, particularly for the Medicare. So for those people who are Australian residents or permanent residents, we don't get Medicare for free. We actually pay 2% of our taxable income towards Medicare. But for those international students, they don't have to pay the 2%. Because they have private health, they can get that exemption. Now, how you get that exemption is the tricky part. And those are the small two examples that makes it different from you lodging your own returns and going to a professional who's been in the industry to be able to lodge your returns.
Yeah. A few tangents I can take there. I don't want to get too much into detail of more information like this, but if there is something else that you would want to share while we're on this topic.
Look, it's obviously not. I'm not here to sell my business or anything like that.
No, of course. Yeah.
I think we kind of addressed everything in from a holistic approach. In terms of what is important. It's important to plan and prepare. It's important to get that prepared before the financial year. We've already talked about some offsets, some surcharges that you can claim if you're on a different visa, and all the rest. I've spoken about MyGov and making sure your super's been paid and the rest. So the key takeaways are there already. But again, if there's any other questions, particularly in this matter, then we're happy to help.
Thank you for summarizing that for us. Just one more thing before we wrap up from this topic. Do you recommend more people to come to your business? Well, of course, it's a yes, but who are the people that you would want to attract more?
Good question. Look, I can't say who I want and who I don't want because you really don't know. Sometimes we have had clients that you think may not be the best clients and have ended up being the best clients who pay really on time. And sometimes you think this is a great company and they're going to be good and you realize that they don't even pay. So in terms of who I can and who I cannot accept is just very broad. But what we try and do internally is we have 4 categories of clients. And this is a very internal confidential thing, which we have A clients, B clients, C clients, D clients.
You don't have to more than...
Yeah, of course. And our team members know who falls within the A category, who falls within the B category and C category and D category.
Is it like A, B, C, D in a...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
so obviously our A clients are the best clients and our D clients, I wouldn't say shit clients, but no, it's not the right way to talk about your clients clearly, especially if they don't know who they are. But D clients are the ones who may not be as great as the A ones, and the way we deal with them, the way we approach them, the way we deal with ATO in regards to their matters will be completely different to what we do with our A clients. So on the A, B, C, D clients, right? Obviously our A clients are really good. They have a lot of systems in place and then they need a lot less supervision. With our D clients, they need a lot more supervision, whereby I'm spending more time with them. And my goal in working with them would be to get them to their C category or bring them to their B category or eventually even A. And that's a learning phase, right? We don't have a definite time of how long that could take. Sometimes I've seen situations whereby an individual who's in a D client can be an A straight away, whereby there's someone that could be a company and there's a D client and could be a D client for probably 2 or 3 years. So there's a lot of external factors that come into it, but that is how we categorize clients and that is what we do in order to, upskill them and make them A's.
How much of your clients are businesses and how much of your clients are just normal people who are working full-time jobs or part-time jobs or have a side hustle on this or something? Don't have to be exactly specific, but just a rough figure so that we know that everyone can come to you.
Well, we have a team of over 10 individuals across Australia. We're based in Darwin, we're based in Sydney, we've got an office in Melbourne. So in terms of our clientele, they vary. They come from different industries. Obviously, if you differentiate between individual and businesses, majority of our clients in each particular area may vary. For instance, Sydney has a lot more individual clients than business clients, whereas in Darwin, we have a lot more business clients than individual clients, So it all varies on how we go and how things work. But yeah, that's the ratio pretty much. it ranges, it ranges. So I would say probably 50-50, like 50% individuals and 50% businesses. And we don't have a particular focus on.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But this is just for me to put into perspective that it's not just businesses who need accountants. Individuals need
Oh,
accountants.
100%.
Yeah.
100% for personal finance to be able to, buy your first home and, be able to do your investments and self-managed super funds and planning for retirement. I think everyone needs that sort of accounting expertise in their life.
And if you are a student in Darwin, in CDU, then where do they need to go?
Well, of course, they can come see us at any time and reach out to us. But the CDU Tax Clinic is a really, really good opportunity whereby it runs from July through to October, from Monday and Tuesday, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., where I am very, very involved in it myself, and you'll probably find me there. So if you can't book an appointment with me on any other day, meet me in the Tax Clinic.
Solid. What would your advice be to someone who's an international student, might be working casually and also studying on the side? Do they need to come to you? And it's two separate questions. Feel free to.
Well, the first question is, do they need to come to me? No, they don't need to come to me. They can just have a quick chat on the phone and, have a 10-minute call and, we can guide them through. Would it be advantageous for them to come to me? 100%. Would it add value into their life? 100%. It would make a difference into their finance? 100%. And that is what we can guarantee, because obviously we are in the industry with so many professionals around us. And I'm not saying it's me who has the best advice in the world. We work with agents and we work with auditors and we work with people who have almost 30 years experience in the industry that sometimes even we go back and ask questions to. So for that person to be able to come see us is not only that avenue to just meet myself, but meet that whole Samaf team with so much experience in the past number of years. So that is what they will be, that would add value into their life. So they don't need to come to me, but with
It
all
would be
that,
advantageous.
right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, you could go buy a candy from a store, but if you were given an invitation to a whole chocolate factory, then it's obviously a little bit more enticing, right? Rather than just a candy store.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And coming back to suggestions for international students. Financial, we'll go on to the other side as well, but let's just talk about financial.
Well, I liken look, I've been a student myself for many years. In fact, I still say that I'm still a student because we learn every day of our lives,
Absolutely.
right? So, but if you're doing a degree, or if you're a student in academia, especially if you're a young person or a migrant or an international student, whatever, I like putting those things into three parts, right? It's your professional, it's your personal, and it's also your spiritual. That is also something that resonates with me. Now, a lot of people may not be spiritual, and that could be physical or sports or anything, meditation or anything that works with you that can connect you to that energy. But those are the three things that I would particularly say to focus on. So obviously your education, which is your career, it's the most important thing for the team members that work with us, for the interns that do our internship with us, for any not-for-profit that we've been part of. The first priority when we come as an international student is our studies, regardless of whatever happens, rain, hail, storm, whatever. That's your first priority. You got to get your degree done. That's why you're here. Your job is something that is in addition to everything that you're doing. It's a casual job. It's what pays your bills. It's what pays your day to day. It is definitely something your priority, but it's not something that you should focus on so much over your studies. And that is what we have seen a lot more down south, is that a lot of people pay more attention to the jobs that they do rather than the education that they study, not realizing that the education that you study will eventually lead you to a way better job, rather than just focusing on it right now. So obviously your personal, which is your academia, then your financial, is to make sure that you focus on your thing, and then your spiritual, because I think it's very important that as an international student, when you're doing so many jobs, when you're studying so much, there is something that you need to do that makes you happy, that gives you joy, and that could be anything. I just put it in a spiritual term, but it could be sports, it could be, just hanging out with friends, or, being involved in a hobby, or kayaking, or kite surfing, or anything, so those three things is something that I would tell any international student to, put it as a priority and just enjoy the journey.
Personal, financial, and spiritual. Thanks for putting that in. And do you think this also links back to the instant gratification topic we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Because you could do a job now which would pay you less, might even pay you in cash, not recommended, or you could just wait and develop your skills and then get into actually what you wanted to do when you signed up for the degree.
Yeah, exactly right. It's because we come from a country whereby the Australian dollar is so powerful,
Yeah.
where if someone pays us $25 an hour, it's a lot of money. So coming to that environment straight away as a young person is 100% very, very enticing, and put an added layer of freedom with having that amount of money. It may call for an amazing opportunity for an investment, or it could call for a recipe for disaster. It's literally the choices that you make, right? So that job, the money that you make while you're focusing on your studies, can be so beneficial if you use it wisely and manage it well. And it could also be, the other way around.
You were an international student too, right? Now, when you were a student, was this something that you learned as well? Like, did you know this fact back then, or did you also work jobs like that?
No, I did all the jobs like that. I've made everything that I'm preaching right now, or if you would say preaching, I've made all those mistakes.
But we learn from our mistakes.
Exactly
We
right.
know
I've been someone who loved instant gratification. I've been into that environment. I completely acknowledge it and I address it. And that is why I go out there, because I've learned from it. If I was someone who hadn't been into that situation, I don't think so. I have the rights to talk about it. But I know how it feels. And I've tried the other way around as well when I've been investing since I was a young age, and delayed gratification, has led to some really, really good results as well. So I've seen both the sides of the world, and experienced both of it, and gotten hit so many times and been below as well. Mistakes, but it's all part of the journey,
Absolutely. And you met Tate in your orientation day when you were like right new in Darwin, day 2, I guess. Was
Yeah.
it day 2? Let's talk about that time. And that was in 2016. Brilliant. 2016. And what did you study?
So I studied accounting. I do the bachelor's in accounting.
Bachelor's in accounting. 2016, when you were here, when you were new, what was your outlook to life? What did you look forward to? And this might be very philosophical and this might also be very old, so you might not even remember it. But if you remember, what was your outlook to life? What would success mean to you at that point?
At that time, I was 20. I'm 31 now.
Mm-hmm.
I was 22 then. Young. Well, if you put it like this, obviously young is a state of mind, like you say.
Yes.
But I was younger, 9 years younger than what I am today. Success looked like a nice house, a good car, very materialistic. I came from Africa, so success, that is what success looked like. And over the last couple of years, I've grown as an individual. And the only thing that I used to look forward to back then was, getting my first car, getting my first house, and all of those things. And once you start achieving that over the years, is when you realize what your success is. And look, that's a very open-ended question, and it answers completely differently to every individual that we meet, right?
Mm-hmm.
For personally, listening to what Gary Vee has said is success, and I resonate to it because I remember it and I talk about it. So definitely it's stuck to my head, right? And is as long as you wake up every morning and are happy and are looking forward to what you're doing, then for sure, for me, that is success. It doesn't matter what I have in my bank account, but I'm happy to come out of my bed, which is the hardest thing for many, and go to work and still be happy about it. I think that is what success looks like for me. And I say that because there had been a time where I used to wake up in the morning and I would probably say hated, but over the years I've realized that hate is a very strong word, but I disliked what I did. And that was completely not success. I did make really good money out of it, but I didn't like it, and that wasn't successful. That, in my opinion. Yeah, I think I just took it around.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just blown away. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
So as long as you're looking forward to the next day, it's not about the materialism. It's not about the shiny cars or the house or
No,
anything like that.
absolutely not. Like And then you only realize it because you have to have it. That's what I'm saying. That if you, a lot of people will say, oh, you'd rather be sad in a Ferrari than sad in a cycle, right? Like, I do agree, to that phenomenon, right? But I'm saying that it's not only the phenomenon, yes, it is part of, especially for migrants. Look, you accept it or not, we have been developed from a very young age to see all these beautiful things around us, which are buildings and cars and, your social media and everything out there. You can't say that it's not instilled in our mind. No. The first thing you see someone driving a car, a really good car, and be like, oh shit, this guy is really successful. We do it. I do it myself. And I'm saying it because we're so passionate about it, right? It is part of our daily lives. I'm not saying that don't do it, right? I'm not refraining from it, but I'm saying that you need to experience that to then know what actual success is, right? So get your cars, get your houses, for sure, but then you'll realize that, okay, it's not only that matters in life.
Yeah. So it's not just the money that matters.
Absolutely not. It's like, now you could have a great house, but if you don't have people living with it, you could have a great car, but if you don't have someone to ride around, what's the whole point?
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, there is no set amount for people because money is a thing where if you had $1,000, you would want 10,000. If you had 10,000, you would want 100,000. If you had 100,000, you would want 1,000,000, or like it goes on. There's no end to it. And I feel like being fulfilled with what you're doing is what would make you stop being a demon chasing money. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
I would. And just when you mentioned that, I think something very interesting that comes to my head was, I think it was said by Simon Sinek, and the guy who wrote the book Why, something that I resonate very closely with. But he was the one who said about, in this matter, whereby, what was the question? Sorry, I kind of lost my chain of thought.
The money aspect. So when is it good to?
Right. So we talk about making 1,000, making 10,000 and stuff like that. And we always want more. The one thing that I realize is, how much do you need to survive?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first number that any standard person needs to have in his mind. What is my rent? What is my groceries? What is my electricity? Standard. Once you come up with that figure, and that, personally, that figure for me is $600 a week. For me to be able to sustain myself, sustain my lifestyle, on a very low scale. I'm not saying I'm eating at Pee-wee's every weekend or, getting Guzman every day. No, none of that lifestyle, obviously. Very similar, buying groceries, stuff like that. I need $500 to $600 a week to sustain me, which is almost $2,400 a month, to almost $30,000 a year. That is what I need. Anything more than that is a plus. And once you have that set in your head, it completely changes your whole perspective, because you only need 30, 40 grand. That's it. If you have a salary of 80 or over 100 or 150, now you have that whole buffer to play with. And you could invest half of it. You could enjoy your luxuries with half of it. If you're supporting people, you could do that. If you're doing charities, you could do that. And that's how we live. It's how the business survives. It's how my personal life survives. It's how I live, with my family overseas as well. It's fixing that number of what we need, and then anything on top of that is our surplus.
Brilliant. So fixing a number you need. What about having some money as a backup for emergency?
No, I think it is 100% important. We in places like the US, where as soon as you graduate, you get a credit card, and you live in a whole credit cycle or a debt cycle, and everything is measured on your credit score, is obviously something that I'm grateful that Australia doesn't practice, and having that debt cycle is completely not right. Just as FYI, your credit card is not your liquid cash. I ask a lot of people that, if something did go wrong, and that was me myself, right? When I was a student, if something went wrong, the only thing I had to rely on was my credit card, which was the only thing I had at that time. And then over the years, I've realized that having a little bit of backup cash is very important. Over the years, with mentors around, professional advice, with listening to a few things, 3 to 6 months is a good buffer to have as a safe side. Because if you don't get a job within 3 to 6 months or find an opportunity, unless there's a world crisis like a world war or COVID, then it's obviously an external factor. But again, we're so grateful to be in Australia because you get looked after.
Yep.
You know. So in terms of that, I think that answers that question.
Absolutely. It covers it pretty well. $600 is a pretty solid figure. And if your expenses are more than that, then, well, good luck. But let's just talk about the 600 figure. So 600 figure is something that you might need, or like I might need to survive. Let's say anyone's example, and we stick to 600. That would be 1,200 a fortnight. And if someone's getting paid, let's say a couple of grand or $3,000 per fortnight, you still save a lot of money extra. And eventually, these are just suggestions. These are not financial advice. And correct me if I'm wrong. What we could do is just keep the 1,200. That's going to be expenses. We're left with 1,800. Out of the 1,800, we could slowly channel some money into building an emergency fund. And once we have some emergency cash, that's when we have that extra money. Suggestions on what should we do with the extra money? Should we start a business? How could someone, because we talked about this earlier and this was not recorded, of course, that having a stable income is addicting and it stops you from being better. Let's just put more context into Akbar's and we'll talk about what people can do in their spare time or with the spare money.
Look, it's an open-ended question. We'll try and narrow it down as the best of
Yeah.
ability. The one really good book that I've read and that changed my life was The Barefoot Investor.
Barefoot Investor.
The Barefoot Investor by Scott Pepe or Scott Peep, tomato, and he has given you a really, really good financial model for people who are actually on an employee wage of how to be financially free. In terms of, he talks about investment. He's a financial advisor. He talks about investments. Look, not everyone is going to agree to what he says. There's Robert Kiyosaki that has a complete different perspective than he does.
Yeah.
So again, you need to do your own research and see what works for you. Having said that, there's a really, really good model that he explains about the 50-30-20, whereby 50% is your operational expenses, 30% is your enjoyment and everything that you want to do, travel, invest, and 20% is just investment straight away. It is also a rule that Warren Buffett practiced, very, very closely in terms of his investments. Now it's up to you what you want to invest in. And investment is completely personal, and that is, I think, the challenge that we face as, people in this generation, is that when we look at people buying properties, let's get into property market. When we see people getting into shares, let's do shares, crypto, let's do crypto. So at the end of the day, we're just being guided by what the whole surrounding around us is, and we just want to jump on the bandwagon, not realizing that what is it that you want. And the first question that I ask any client, even if they want to start a business, is what is your why? What is your goal? What is it that you want to achieve, right? And if their goal is just to achieve, to buy their first home and live happily with their family, and that is completely fine, then I don't think so you need to invest so much money, to be able to achieve that goal, right? So it all depends on what you want. And if your goal is just to have that one home and then travel for the rest of your life, great. You speak to a financial advisor and then he plans for you on what you guys want to do. So your investments resonate with your values and what you want to see yourself and your family in the next couple of years. And if that is properties, then fair enough. If that is passive income, then fair enough. If that is traveling across the world, then fair enough. If you don't want no headaches, because I know a lot of people who just want to live a nice retirement life with no stress, no tension. Now imagine if you have a property portfolio, to be able to be sustainable. Now this is an interesting one as well. To be able to get a passive income of $50,000 to $100,000, you need to have at least 5, 6, 7 properties minimum that are already paid off, or at least
$100,000 per year.
Oh my. So because if you buy a unit of $350,000, let's say, you get $20,000 in rent. Let's say if it's fully paid off as well, that's your 20 grand in rent, right? Plus body corporate and reduce all of that. You need 5 houses to be able to get 100 grand. It's simple math, right? Obviously you have your capital gain and all the rest that is separate. But if you just talk about passive income, to make $100,000 a year, you need to have 5 or 6 houses or whatever more, right? Or even if you have like maybe big houses, then maybe you need less because the rental income is high. But I'm just talking about what the Darwin market is. Having said that, imagine all the repairs and maintenance that you have to go through with those 5 houses. Imagine how many tenants that you have to deal with those 5 houses. Imagine how many body corporate meetings you have to attend. How many council meetings that you have to attend.
How many air cons you have to get fixed.
Exactly. Especially with the dry season here in Darwin. So do you really want to live that life? And now when you ask people that, they're like, no, that's not the retirement I want to have. Okay. That's when you know that property is not your game. In my personal case, and I know that my family, like from my wife's side, they do that because now they're retired, but she's very active. She's a tradie, she wants to move around. So for her, she enjoys it to look after the properties, to, meet with the tenants, to deal with the body corporate, and she enjoys it. So for her, that was perfect, that property investment. But for someone who doesn't want it, it's better to just invest that $1 million in shares and get, 5% return, and you still make your 50 grand. You see, and you don't have to worry about it at all. You see, so your investments really, really closely depend on what you want in the future. And if you want a little bit of everything, then invest in everything.
A little bit of everything, as in like a house of
Yeah, I think diversification is the most important thing in your investments.
or like with money in general.
Generally, your investments, your income as well. I know, like, yes, I am an accountant and I do accounting for a living and I have an accounting firm and whatever, but we still have other income sources as well. We run a whole social enterprise on the side called Top and Maintenance that employs refugees, migrants, and asylum seekers. That's something that I don't deal with day to day. So that is my investment. It resonates with my values, because I'm providing employment opportunities for the vulnerable and for people who come from underprivileged backgrounds. But second, most importantly, it provides me a sustainable income, right? A business is also a type of investment, especially when it runs automated with systems and process in place. I think it's great. So for me, that is my investment. My business is my investment because I know that when I retire, this is what I would want to do. I would still want to deal with clients. I would still want to have that office environment. I just don't want to sit on a beach drinking a cocktail, which I would love, by the way, but not for the rest of my life. So yeah.
Brilliant. We have 2 tangents that we can take from here. The first one is about just talking about housing in general, or we can keep going down the path of investments. There's a couple things which are really important to people these days, and this is not just for someone who is young, well, as we said, young is a state of mind, but it resonates with everyone. These 2 things first is how can I get a house, and how can I make sure that I can retire as early as possible. If we put it on an average, then most people want to retire in the next 20 years, ideally, but there might be people who might have already retired, so this one might not be so much applicable to them. Let's talk about the people who want to buy a house. What are your suggestions on what could be that way if you're having, let's say, 2 or 3 grand fortnight as an income?
So a couple of things. First is that obviously I'm not a mortgage broker or I'm not a financial advisor, so I cannot tell you what they should or how it can be done. What I'm talking from a customer point of view or from a client point of view, the first thing in life, whether you want to buy a house, whether you want to do your retirement, is your state of mind, right? Is to ask that question to yourself. How many young people actually think of retirement? Trust me, I speak to many, many, many young people during test time. No one, or maybe very, very few, actually speak about the retirement. Not even in the last 1 year, I would say. No, none of my clients have actually asked me, Ali, how can I retire? Because that is something that a lot of people don't think, right? And that is why you have financial advisors. And we only think of retirement as soon as we reach 50 or when something bad happens to us, right? That makes us unable to be mobile enough. And you're like, oh, crap. What if something happens to me? Then what? And that's when we start thinking about retirement. And in most cases, that is pretty late, right?
Yep.
So, and even when it comes to buying a home, sometimes I have to raise that question. Is it what you want to do? And you're like, and someone's like, yeah. So it is, everyone wants to do it. It's the Australian dream, it's the American dream, it's every migrant's dream to have a house. Yes, but how often do we actually think about it? And that's the first thing, is to start thinking about it and being present in that state of mind of that question that you're asking yourself. In this case was buying a home and your retirement. Once you do these two things, and that's why before in the initial part I did speak about spirituality, because all of those three things are very, very close. Your personal goals, and then your financial goals, and then your spiritual goals. Because your personal is now you have created that state of mind to be able to do those two things, is buy a house and be financially free, or make a retirement plan. Second, once you have those things clear, automatically you will do the necessary steps from your financial point of view to be able to achieve that. And that doesn't only mean work, but that also means to be engaged with people who can give you this information. Because if it's your state of mind, you're manifesting it, you will eventually, and that's where the spiritual part comes in, where I believe in energies, whereby once it's your state of mind and you're already working towards it, you will be attracted to people around you who will give you that advice. And like I say, that everything that I'm talking here is from personal experience.
Yes.
Right? So when I started thinking about my, buying my first home, which was a few years ago, and thinking about my retirement, which was again a few years ago, the first thing that I did was have that state of mind, start speaking to the people who are in the industry so they can advise on what I need to do financially. And then because of having that two things set in a really good way, my spiritual part, or the energies or whatever that is around us, attracted me to those things. So it could be real estate agents, it could be brokers agents, it could be buyers agents. And I got that opportunity, and it's not something that happens as a miracle. This is a recipe, right? And you have all the resources around you to help you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just taking that first step, which is getting into that state of mind and planning.
Brilliant. In one of your videos, your call to action in one of your videos was, come to us and we will take you to the Australian dream. Can you expand more on that?
Yep. The Australian dream, well, it's a stolen phrase from the American dream, is to buy a house. We have partnered with Mortgage Choice, and we have other finance brokers around down south that we have partnered with, and we have realized that that is a big one in many, many young people, or many migrants or international students, or anyone per se, as part of their goals.
Mm-hmm.
It is part of it. What we have created with Samaf is that community, is it the journey. We're not only a business, and what I've realized over the past years is that from the time any international student or a young person, regardless of where they're from, what they believe in, doesn't matter, comes to Samaf at an information session to start doing his taxes, from that day, that person becomes our client. And that person, what I believe in, is going to be our client until he retires. And now it becomes my responsibility to offer everything that he will need, is that part of his career. When I got into the business, with Manfred, the question was, that there's so many accountants here, how are you going to break into the market? And we were like, we're not looking for existing businesses. We're here to work with already people who are not represented, or work with new businesses that are up and coming. So if you look at our revenues in the first 2 years, may not be great, but we did 100% of the revenue after the third year, and increased 100% again in the fourth year as well. Because the first 2 years was just prepping and creating those groundworks for those people. Because every student that came with us eventually graduated, got a job, wanted to start a business, and we have so many new businesses that are up and coming and emerging that we are accountants for, and we're so proud to, call them part of the Samaf community. And it doesn't really matter where they come from or anything like that, but it's just that journey. So the Australian dream was part of one of those journeys, because I talk about 90-day goals, and I talk about action items and what you want to do. And like we say, personal, financial, and your spiritual. Well, personal goal is always to look after your family and give you that security, which comes as a home. And we tried to provide that service through the finance brokers that we had around us. We also introduced them to buyers agents or real estate agents, so they can be assisted in those matters, still being part of the Samaf community.
Should we just take a small tangent to talk about the 90-day goals?
Great. Something that I learned as a coaching program, like I say, every father has a father. That means even though I'm talking right now,
That's funny because we have a quote for that in Hindi as well.
oh really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Har baap ka baap hota hai na? Yeah. So every father has a father. So because of that, even though I may, know all these things, I've had a mentor in my life, and I'm
Yeah.
sure he had a mentor in his life. So it's all a chain, right? So I also go through business coaching, and I think over the past year or so, what has molded me is that part of coaching. And one thing that I've taken out of that is the 90-day goals, is to write your 90-day goals. And I did a whole video on those 90-day goals and explained 5 things as to why. I'm not going to talk about it here, so you can watch my video.
Okay.
But yes,
About it. Yeah. Fine.
you can put the link on there. But yeah, so those 90-day goals, I've spoken about 5 things as to why it is important.
Yep.
I'll probably touch base on one thing as to why it's important to do your 90-day goals, because it resonates with your values, right? It really, really resonates with you. And when you write them down, it acts like a mirror, because it sees what's inside you, because I don't need to know. No third person needs to know. These are just your goals. So if you write them down, and whatever they may be, and it could be even buying a Rolls Royce, right? Like, it is what it is. Like I say, we listen, we don't judge.
Yeah.
No, it's completely fine. For me, I'm big on holidays. I really, really love traveling.
Yeah.
And my 90-day goals always includes traveling.
Yeah.
And I've been able to accomplish it as much as I can.
Brilliant. And you're traveling soon, right?
I am on Monday. Yes.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Safe travels, brother. Let's talk about building Samaf. How did you? Actually, I would go even 2 steps back. Another reiteration. Did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yes.
Yes. Like from the very scratch of it, when you enrolled into your accounting course.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that question, because I actually never have spoken about it a lot. So my closest friends, who I grew up with, well, not grew up with, but who I spent a lot more time here, know that I've always been someone who likes to educate. I've always been someone who wants to be out there in terms of adding value, especially from a academic point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if it pays the bills, it's even better. But ever since I came to Australia, but even before that, the whole side gig and the side hustle started when I was back in Tanzania. Even when I was working, even when I was studying as a young person, even though I had a full-time job and stuff like that, I still always sold cars on the side, or I sold phones on the side. So I always had that thing in me, and I'm like, I want to sell, I want to be able to be in the market, and the joy that comes from it, and the adrenaline that comes from it, is
The
what,
gratification.
yes, so was always something that I was very intrigued by. And then obviously coming to Australia, I did focus on my studies, which was the most important thing. But while I was studying, I got the opportunity to become a PASS leader, which is the peer studies sessions. Oh, yeah, there we go.
That's how it led to my current job.
There we go. So PASS was something that started my career as, into leadership, or, business per se, which then led me to become a tutor for the Indigenous Tutorial Assistance Support, which I still do today, and very, very proud of that we've got 5 Indigenous students that have graduated, and I've tutored them throughout their careers, and their whole degrees. So something that is really, really something that is very important to me, to be thinking that I've added value into people's lives. But during that time, before even Samaf, began or anything like that, I already had a job. There was something that I launched. Well, not launched, was just in the talks about it at that time, and it was called YPM, which is Your Personal Mentors. That was the first entrepreneurial project that I started.
In Australia?
In Australia,
Okay.
in Darwin particularly. YPM, it was in partner with my really, really good friend, and the idea of that was to create a platform where people can get tutorial assistance in mainly subjects of accounting to start off with, and then obviously branch out to other areas. It something that I started. It worked initially. We got a few students on board. It's not that we marketed, we did something, but we had a business model, we had a business plan for it, all the rest that you can think about. It never materialized, but At that time, we got into leadership. That's when the Students Association started. That's when I became part of the Council of International Students Australia. And instead of going towards the entrepreneurial side, I took the leadership option and student leadership areas. And so answering your question, that yes, I've always been someone that likes my freedom, and obviously because of that entrepreneurial spirit that I've had, but it's also from where I come from. Tanzania, whereby from the community that I belong in, business is given a lot more value, a lot more importance.
Yeah.
Freedom is given a lot more importance, and doing something for yourself is also given a lot more importance. Also, because being in that Tanzanian environment, your business has a lot more potential to make more money compared to a job. Whereas in Australia, you could, defer, right? If someone is in a high-paying job of $200,000-$300,000, I would say, then why would you want to start a business, right? If you're making that amount of money, and if you're happy, then I don't think so. Business is your something that you would want to do, because to compensate that sort of income in a business after paying taxes is not impossible, but it will be a journey. It's not going to be something that will happen overnight.
Yeah.
So
Top-end maintenance, Samaf, your YPM. What else did you start? I want to know more.
in COVID, I also started something called as "What's Your Excuse?" And if you go into my personal Instagram, there are highlights there about WYE. We had the team, we had the logos, which was pretty much a personal training program. And I did my certificate 3 and 4 in personal training. I was into fitness. I'd gained a lot of weight, and then I, shrunk down.
Ooh, just to prove the point?
Yeah. So
Oh my God.
yeah. So it's happened during COVID when I lost a little bit of weight. I got into really good shape, and I was like, okay, if I can do this for myself, then I can also do this for someone else. I had a team of 4 people, and everyone had different goals. So mine was losing weight. There was someone who wanted to do marathons. There was someone who was a power lifter. There was someone who just wanted to do bodybuilding. So all 4 of them, there's 2 guys, 2 girls, and all their details are on my highlights on Instagram, and all the trainings that we did and everything that was it. So yeah, What's Your Excuse was also something that was part of my projects, something that I still do as a side hustle, never monetized, but we still did group training sessions and things like those. So yeah.
Where do we enroll?
I don't know if I'm on that path. I always make this joke. It's either you make money or you make a 6-pack. I'm sure all these motivational speakers out there are probably going to defer to what I'm saying, but yeah. But nah, I think it's very important to look after your health, not only to have a 6-pack, but to be mentally sound as well.
Amazing. And okay, now you've talked about YPM. You talked about let's talk about one business. Samaf is, of course, I think would be the one, but it could also be top-end maintenance. Let's take me through the whole story, or take us through the whole story.
Well, look, when you're younger, you obviously have these different ideas, and everyone goes through it. You want to try this, you want to try that, you want to try that, and that's how the whole YPM started, and obviously didn't materialize, or never flourished, or whatever. And then WYE started, What's Your Excuse? And we started that, and I learned so many skills. So all of those were experiences for me. The one thing that I was taught by my mentor was that, and he gave me a good metaphor or methodology behind it, was you go into a village and you're going to do something for that village. Now you have a choice of going to one area and building one well and going all the way down there, whereby that well can sustain the whole village, or you go into that village and you build 10 different wells in different areas, but you don't go all the way deep down. So yes, they will have water for some time, but there will be a time where they'll run out because it's not dug deep enough.
Yeah.
And that is what resonated with me very closely. And after all these initiatives, I've realized that I need to give 100% into one thing. And at that time is when I realized that I have to give 100% in Samaf. So everything else that goes with it is just a support to what I do for Samaf. But my one thing that I give 100% in is my Samaf business. And that's because of what I was, told.
Would you be happy to take us through the whole story
Of Samaf?
Samaf? Yeah.
Yeah. So
from the beginnings up until, so how did you find it? What was the whole process? What was the whole journey like?
So COVID happened.
Yeah.
The the prime minister at that time, I won't mention names, but during COVID, asked all international students to pack their bags and go back home, which was obviously a wake up call that you could be told to leave anytime and you have to. And it was something that was like, all right, cool. It is what it is. At that time, I just begin my journey into my residency and stuff like that. Again, I lost my job, stuff like this, and I was thinking and reflecting and being like, okay, what am I going to do? And there came this bling. Okay, I've studied accounting. I know how to do bookkeeping. I think I can look after people's books. And because of all those relationships that I'd made over my university career, where I met so many people, young people that I network with, I went and reached out to two prominent business owners. I don't mind even talking about them. Jazz Walia, who's the owner of Fresh Point and owns many cafes, and Rumal, who also is in the hospitality industry and, are both two successful business owners. And I went and spoke to them, and they were young people. And I went and spoke to them and told them that, look, I have this passion and, I really want to do something on my own and I think I can monetize this. And at that time, there was this phrase of the Northern Territory about boundless possible. It doesn't matter what you do, but you have to give it a go.
Yeah.
And it really, really resonated with me. And I was like, I will give it a go. And they just encouraged me. And they were like, do it, Ali, and we will support you. So just because of those words, if they became clients or didn't become clients is all secondary. But the fact that they empowered me at that time and gave me those encouraging words that do it, we will support you, and we will give you one of our businesses to look after, was just that push of motivation that, hey, I can do it. So then I knew that, okay, I could do it and this is the service that I could provide. The next step was, okay, what are we going to call it? How are we going to put the logo out? How are we going to do the launch and all of those exciting things? That is also very, very overwhelming, in considering that I don't come from a very creative background. I'm more technical. I reached out to Manfred. Manfred was a close friend that I also met through networking and, through the Council of International Students Australia and through the Students Association. And I told Manfred, okay, we have lost our job now, and let's do something that, we can get some advantage from. So Manfred had a hospitality job at that time, which he also lost. And he was like, okay, there's nothing to lose. So we were then thinking about what we were going to call it. And something that I always, because the name and the logo was something that I knew that if I put it now, I won't be able to change it for the next couple of years because it's going to become a brand on its own. And I wanted something that had a lot more meaning. And I'm someone who likes my numbers. You will realize that my unit number is also 5. The office address is 3/2, which comes to 5. Samaf is also 5 words. So for those who believe it or not, it doesn't really matter. It's my thing.
Does that come from astrology?
Yeah, well, numerology and astrology, more of numerology because I'm a numbers person.
Something to do with planets as well?
Yeah, I don't go into more details into it. Obviously, there's a lot more linked to it, 100%. But obviously, like the 8 and his number of money and things like those. So I kind of like look into it. It's probably just something that makes me feel good. But nothing about it. It's probably that aspect of that spirituality or energy, that, manifestation, and how I get attracted to it. Having said that, again, it were like something that would resonate, something that would be very important. Family is very important to me, but not only family, and that is what I realized when I came to Darwin, that family was not just your mom, dad, sister, and extended family. But when you come to a place like Australia, your family becomes literally you and I, the friends that you meet. And I am so grateful that I have 4 really, really good friends who come from 4 different countries, from 4 different religions, from the 4 different cultures, which is great because we got to experience all those holidays, to be part of all their celebrations. I'm able to share my religion and my culture with my friends, and they are able to do the same. And that is why the logo has that importance of those 4 friends in it. Coming to the word Samaf, obviously we said family, and we wanted to relate to our closest family. And Manfred then realized, and we were talking to Manfred, and I was like, oh, Manfred, what are your family names, right? And he said that most of his family members started with M. And there was an A somewhere in there, but M was the major one. And then I looked into my family, and I was like, okay, Sakina is my mom's name, Arif is my dad's name, Muskan is my sister's name, also luckily my wife's name as well, Ali, and obviously the F stands for family. And M was also Manfred and all his family members, and we put it out there, and it looked really good. It sounded really nice, at least for me. I don't know about everyone else, but yeah, that's how Samaf started. That's where we came it from a name, and when people ask us, we have a story to tell. So that's how it all began. And yeah, as soon as we launched it, we got, because of our CDU connection, we got the tax clinic, and yeah, the rest is history.
Beautiful. And how long did it take for you to build it all up where it was completely self-sustaining?
A long time. I think the business has been in 5 years, but if you ask me that question, I would say that in building that, it's probably taken another 10 years behind it, because your leadership skills, your ability to deal with emotions, your ability to deal with people, the ability to sell to your clients, and importantly, to maintain those clients as well. It's very easy to get a client, but it's the hardest part to sustain it. And that is what I've been learning till today, is to ensure that I'm giving the utmost value to my client that I did 1 year ago and I'm doing now. And yeah, that was...
This is also from one of your videos where you talked about communication being a gap and why communication is so important and how you're like always there for your clients. This is also something that Rifa told me, that the people who work in True Blue IT, they know their clients and then they're right there. Big companies, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to get cancelled by any of them. But big companies often have this whole chain of customer service where trying to get hold of them when you're having an issue is like really difficult. But I feel like having that no gap of communication where you have everything clear, anyone can reach out to you, being there for your clients. I see what you're trying to paint. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, bigger organizations have a lot more hierarchy. There's a lot more bureaucracy. There's a lot more layers. And there's nothing wrong with it, right? It's just a bigger organization. Whereas in our case, because we are a smaller organization, our team members are directly in contact with the clients and they know them at face value. I know everything in terms of my clients, what they do, who they do it for, and how my team members, deal with them. So I think the communication part is important, but it's also about that accessibility. I know that I'm going away for some time, but I've also communicated that to my clients way in advance. I've still given everyone my WhatsApp number, my personal number, which a lot of people don't. And I was just being interested that you mentioned that, because a lot more over the past years, my wife has been telling me that I am able to get an HR person who can deal with the team members and who can deal with the clients. So then I can only deal with that one person rather than dealing with 15 team members and then obviously all the clients that they deal with. And I think the challenge as an entrepreneur, that I'm sure every entrepreneur out there, is the sense of control. It's something that I learn every day. I still want to have that control. I still want to be aware of what exactly is happening in each part. And as and when it grows, you realize that, oh my God, it's actually getting overwhelming. If it's just the tax clinic, it's great. But now we have the tax clinic and a number of projects only in Darwin. And then you bring Sydney and Melbourne in place, and obviously all the other offices that we want to open. It just gets too much. And then obviously I'll need to put in those layers so then I don't get as overwhelmed. And it just happens as the organization grows bigger. But if you have those systems in place, and I talk about that a lot, I've done a number of videos on it as well. As long as you have the systems, you have the scripts in place. Our team members actually have a script to speak to the ATO. They have a script on how to speak to a client, how to address each situation that they have, the few frequently asked questions. They have a cheat sheet, that our team members have. So that's the only thing that we can do to avoid that situation. Again, on mentioning the accessibility part, I think it's important for the client to just be able to reach out to me whenever they can. And that is what creates that relationship bound, regardless of whoever is doing their books. As long as they know, okay, as long as I call Ali, he'll answer the phone unless he's sleeping or dead.
Let's hope that you don't sleep or you don't mad. I'm just kidding. Please sleep. Take care of your sleep. Talking about scripts, Devansh is here with me in the studio, and Devansh we also develop guidelines to communicate with students. I'm not going to go in too deep because I don't want to conflict with my work, but yes, I definitely agree, and I see your point. You giving out the whole story behind Samaf, it's just extremely beautiful to me. You know why? Because often people think that having something built up, it's just a matter of having that thing started and you'll eventually build it up. But it's a lot of the skills that you already have and a lot of the connection that you already have, that's what puts it in place in the first, like, to begin with. Because without having the skills and the knowledge, even if you have a great idea, you can't sustain it unless you're constantly developing. Would that be fair to say?
100%. Your skills, your knowledge, but most importantly, your network.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep saying it that Samaf has been 5 years, but in terms of how we have made it, it's probably a whole journey of another 10 behind it. Of who we have met, how we have connected, how active we were at uni. And a lot of people say, oh, you don't have to be book smart or whatever, or, be present in class. And a lot of young people don't do that. And my friends still make fun of me, being the first one out there and answering all the questions raised by the lecturer.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't like it as well. But at the end of the day, because of being present in front of the lecturer when I started my business, he landed that to me, or to our company, because of those things that I did while I was in class. And it could be completely irrelevant. I never even thought of what's going to happen. The project was never existed. But it's all those little things that you do in your uni life. You do it.
Yeah.
How I met Rumal in Jazz was through the Kindness Shake, was through because of volunteering, because they used to do catering. That's how we became friends.
Yeah.
And that's how, things eventuated. So all those little connections, even till today, there are some connections that there's someone in the governance department that is his mentor, is someone that I, take advice from and stuff like that. But that person was someone that I met at university who was at a really high post at that time. And I was a student leader and I was a secretary, and we wrote constitutions together and we took advices, not even knowing how it was going to lead to, some of, as, getting a client from him. And so it's all those little things that you do in your early days of your life that you don't know how it's going to then translate into, your
Reminds
business.
me of the Steve Jobs speech, if you watched it. I'm kind of sure it's Steve Jobs, but I may be wrong, where you just have to believe that the dots will somehow align.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all about faith and hope, right? And believe. Like, if you don't believe in yourself and if you don't have the faith that it's going to work out, then it's just going to be hard. And the three or two things that I always tell people, that if you're doing the right thing and if you're going to be helping people out, then I don't think so you need to be worried about anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the awesome thing is, it's also having the dots in place so that they align. And I'm sorry, I'm going back to the dots again. But the reason why I go back is because now I can see how the dots are aligning for you. For someone who's a student and they might be working like the instant gratification chat we had earlier, and doing jobs. So yes, it's important to be doing all those stuff, but we need to see what's the sacrifice we make. Yes, we get money, but we also sacrifice our time. And in sacrificing the time, either we compensate it by not wasting more time on the side, or we don't sacrifice that time and focus it on things like volunteering, things like having a distinction when you graduate. So like being studying constantly and learning and upskilling yourself, learning new skills, going out there, networking with people, all of that, that's creating dots for yourself. And then in the end, you would just boom out. And
Yeah, and it all comes down to your why, right? Like, whether you study and get a distinction, or whether you have casual jobs and get paid, or you just want to do volunteering and help out the community.
Yeah.
All of these three things are completely fine, and we have everyone around us who are either doing all the three or involved in one of the three or some of the three. At the end of the day, it's why you're doing what you're doing. And if you have your why very, very clear, then whether you take the distinction pathway, it's still going to work out for you. If you take the job pathway, it's still going to work out for you. And if you take the volunteering pathway, it's still going to work out for you. So having that why at the middle of it is very important. Ask why you're doing what you're doing. What is it that you want to achieve in the next 5 years, 10 years? And once you have that cleared out, and that's why when we came back to the point of the Australian dream, is just having that mindset first, which is your why. And once you have that, then you either do 3 or 2 or 1, it'll still work out. But as long as you know what your vision is, it answers half of your problems.
How far ahead should we be looking in terms of our vision?
Well, I would say don't even think about tomorrow. And I would say even think about the next 5 years. It's how you want to live your life. Like, I would say 5-10 years is a standard thing. You have a vision of how you can plan in 5 or 10 years. But there's something that says in the Quran that, I plan and you plan, but He's the best of planners. And at the end of the day, it's your destiny. And obviously people who are spiritual and will still believe on things like those. But at the same time, it is important to have that pathway in place, and whether it works or not works, I never knew I was going to come to Australia. I thought I would never want to come to a Western country, and live in my life in Africa. And now I only want to live in a Western country and not anywhere else. I'm a proud Australian now, and I want to give us back territorial, and I want to give it back as much as I can to the place that has given me, and made me the person that I am today. So, but it was because of my why. I had it very clear. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to create a life for my family. I knew I wanted to have a life for myself. I knew I wanted to be involved in the community. I knew I wanted to have a really good friend circle around me. And look, these are none of these goals that I'm talking about are materialistic, right? These are all goals that we all have in life. But how can we manage all of that by still keeping focused on our career goals and everything that we're doing? So, yeah. Kind of went just all around, I think.
No. That was, I'm just processing everything now. For someone who is, let's say, a student, an international student, or even a young person who has not given it much of a thought what the why would be, and have just flowed with it, because it happens a lot where when you're in it, you don't get to see the broader perspective. You can't get out and watch the actual thing that's happening. What might be happening is, oh yes, for example, you're working, you're studying, or you're working full time, or anything like that, but you haven't really thought of what's going to happen next. What's 5 to 10 years ahead in life going to look like? What would you suggest to someone who hasn't given that a thought and would want to, and should, or why should they change?
Well, because you asked about international students particularly, the answer would probably be that where most of the international students we come from, we may not have that exposure and awareness. When was the last time your parents spoke to you about your 5-year plan? Maybe, well, for people who grow up in Australia, possibly yes, but I don't remember the last time my parents asked me, or what is my 5-year plan. If someone doesn't ask me, how am I supposed to have that thing? Right? I'm a 19, 18-year-old young person who's just got into the industry. I have all these luxuries around me, and if I don't get asked the question, how am I even supposed to think about it? So I think the conversation, it is everyone's right. Yes, everyone is accountable. But if someone like myself, if I know about something, I feel like it becomes my utmost responsibility to be able to share it. And a really good friend of mine says, if I can, I should. And that's how I do it. Everything that we're doing in our life, whether even if it's going out of our comfort zone and doing something, but if we can, we should. And similarly, if you and I are aware about, having a 5-year plan is important, having your why is important, thinking about it is important, then it becomes our responsibility to put it out there. And could be resources like this and mediums like this, where people, if they take the time out to listen, then the questions will come automatically. Because you can't tell anyone that, you're not thinking, so you're not worth it, or, it's just because they haven't been exposed to that, environment. Right. So I think the question that is in terms of when you're juggling so many things, how is it that you give your 100% to everything?
Yep.
And if I'm getting that right, and how you manage, everything. The one thing I'll say, and might be very, very shrewd here, that if you think that you are doing a job, if you think that you're the only one studying, and if you think that you're the only one volunteering, then you need to check, because 20,000, there's 700,000 international students across Australia, and at least 60% of them are doing exactly what all of us are doing, right? They're all doing a job. They're all working. They're all doing volunteering. Maybe some are not involved in volunteering, some are, it's all your choices. Just having that in mind solves half of that stress, that overwhelming situation, because now you're part of the majority. You're not isolated. And that is what I feel like international students feel, is that isolation, being like, oh shit, I'm the only one who's working. I've got to cook food. I've got to be volunteering. Nah, mate, there's fucking other 300,000 people who have done the same exact shit that you did, are doing right now, and now they have achieved everything that they can, and there are stories right in front of you, right? There are all these international students. If you talk about me, because I'm sitting here, I was involved in like 5 different organizations. I did volunteering. I still did an internship. I still worked a full-time job. Yes, it came with a lot of sacrifice. It came with a lot of losing out on really, really great. Like, I've never been to a nightclub or a party in my whole uni life, pretty much, until towards the end of my career. So those are the sacrifices that come with it. But if you put yourself as part of the majority and be like, well, if that guy can do it and achieve it, why can I not? That is the first part that actually gives you that enthusiasm and courage to keep going. Because once you get demotivated, then everything is done, right? So keeping that motivation on, having that in mind is the one thing, right? And then once you go into your career, and then you obviously do other things and you speak to other people, and then once you have done all of this and you have that mindset, then the question that you ask yourself is, how can I do it better? And that is what I will tell international students to think about. Don't tell me you're managing your time and you have so many things going on. Fuck. Everyone does it. Everyone goes through it. How can you do it better? And that is when you start talking about the tools. Do you have an accountability coach around you, or you have your friends who can be accountable to you? Do you have run on calendar invites? And I think it's such a useful tool is having those calendar invites that at that time we didn't practice it so much, but now everyone does. It just gives you those select blocks. And for me, even, I think the most important thing is planning that calendar and setting blocks aside, but also setting blocks aside for your peace time, which is also important. So while we say we have a job, while we say we are studying, while we say we're also volunteering, where is your time, right? So when you put in your time, where you reflect and rejuvenate, all those other things become very, very easy. So a resource to take away, calendar invites, put in your blocks in terms of what your uni time is, what your volunteering time is. And number 3 would be setting your priorities. Because what we sometimes do, especially as passionate people, is that any opportunity that comes to us, we say yes to it. We say yes to everything. And I also did a video on that as well, about saying yes to everything.
By the way, just pause there for a second. Everything that Ali is saying about his videos, his links are in the description box and in the comment sections if there's no description box.
Yeah, and I said that, and it actually went really far and wide about we saying yes to everything. And one thing that I personally do, or as Samaf that we do, is ask ourselves 2 questions. Is this going to make us money, or is this going to lose us money? Right? Those are the first questions that we're going to ask ourselves from a business point of view. Whereas from an individual point of view, from an individual point of view, there's 3 things that you should ask yourself whenever you're taking on an opportunity. Ask it if you want, if you don't want, I don't care. But the 3 things that you should ask is, what am I gaining out of that opportunity, right? Number 2, what am I losing from that opportunity? And number 3, am I ready to afford that loss? And that is the tricky part. So let's say, look, uni, you have to do it. There's no option. A part-time job, you have to do it because it pays your bills. The volunteering now is an optional thing. And this is where you ask your questions. You don't have to be involved in 10 organizations. You could be involved in one and given 100%. And that one organization will lead you to the other 100 organizations, for sure. But if you start being part of so many organizations and doing so many volunteering things, remember, if it's going to gain you, great. If it's going to lose something, great. And I'll give you an example. If you can afford to lose it. So let's say if I was going to lose time, which is most the case that we're going to lose whenever we're doing something, right? Time is the most important. But if the third question is, am I able to afford losing the time? Which means that if I had that time, would I be able to go for a jog or have a nap, and rejuvenate myself? Can you afford to lose that? No. Because that is very, very important to your physical development and your mental development. So then you're not able to lose it, right? Afford to lose it. Whereas in some cases okay, if I lost time, what else would I do? Oh, I would watch Netflix. No. So then I don't mind losing it because I would do something else that is not productive anyway.
Yeah.
So, well, for some people, Netflix is productive. So again, we listen, we don't judge.
Yeah.
Do whatever that makes you happy. But those things is what you should ask yourself. So yeah. Yeah, and talking about priorities, I think the most important thing is to realize that our priorities will be completely different to our parents' priorities, right? And the other thing that is also challenging, that we make our parents' priorities our priorities, which is the biggest challenge, because our parents' priorities was because of that environment. Their priorities was to save up enough cash so they can send their son out there to make money so then he can look after us. Like, honestly, that whole phenomenon is bullshit, right? And it completely opens my mind up here when I come to Australia, whereas everyone is independent, right? When a young person goes out of his home, his first number one priority is not to look after his parents. His number one priority is to look after himself, because that's what his parents have instilled in because of the environment they live in. I'm not saying that that is wrong. 100% not. Our parents had so many challenges at that time. There is no Medicare, there is no education, there is no healthcare. What are they supposed to do? Right? You can't be treated in a place like Tanzania if you don't have $10,000 in your bank account. The doctor doesn't even look at you. In some cases, you can't even go into a hospital without paying a deposit. For that person, that is their priority, to have enough cash to be able to do that. And if that's his priority, how is he going to make goals and write down his 90-day goals? No, it's just not practical. Imagine you talking to your mom and telling her, oh, have you written your 90-day goals? She'd be like, what are you talking about? My 90-day goals is to make sure that you are fed. That's my 90-day goals. What is your dad's 90-day goals? To go out there, earn money so I can have food on the table. Those are those 90-day goals. But now we're lucky here, our priorities change. Because now we don't have to worry about health, because we know that as soon as something, God forbid, happens to us, we can go to the hospital and get the best medication. Even though we can't afford education, we will still be supported by the government to help us. Even if we don't have a job, it's not like we're going to die hungry, because we have Job Seeker and we have Centrelink. So because you have those priorities sorted, then you can focus on your life and be able to be the best version of yourself. So it completely depends on the two environments, right? In the two backgrounds. And once you start living, and a lot of young people, especially, I don't know, wherever they come from, we have the same priorities as our parents, unfortunately. And that is why sometimes it actually limits us in what is out there, because our world is so limited. And sometimes also, I love traveling and I like going to these places because I go out there and I see, oh my God, there is so much out there to do in this world. There's so much innovation. There's so much technological advancement that what the hell am I doing? I need to have bigger goals. I need to have bigger priorities. But it's important to get those little things sorted initially that our parents did not have the opportunity for. And it's also important to be empathetic towards it, right? That it is not the greatest situation. That's why they decide to send us out there and make a living for ourselves and, look after that family. But again, I cannot be complaining because there's 600,000 other students that are doing the same thing. So what gives me the right to complain? Like I say, I look after my parents, but I'm sure there's so many other people who look after their whole families. So
Yeah. Sums it up pretty well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I get really, really passionate about this topic because it is, and this can be off the record, because our parents come from those environments where they have so much adversity and their mind is just so limited because they're only looking at, in Kiswahili, and you can probably put that in Swahili, they say, leo ni leo, kesho ni Mungu. That means today is today, tomorrow is God, right? Because they live on a daily basis. Because for them, their priority is, oh, if I leave in the morning, do I have enough for lunch? If I leave in the afternoon, do I have enough for dinner? Tomorrow, I'll figure out. Those are their priorities. And when you write things down, and I'm probably going to throw in a little bit of language, in Gujarati, they say, lakhelo wanchai. That means if you write it down, you can read it and then practice on it. So that is why we didn't do it. People before us didn't do it, but we can, and practice it as much as we can. And again, have those priorities very, very clear.
You're definitely an absolute overachiever. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, from your point of view, and then I
From
can...
from my point of view, I would say that, because, it's just my own independent research. But, what would you say about that?
Well, I think there is something that's called as imposter syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you put someone on a pedestal, and I'll tell you something interesting. If you think I'm an overachiever, I've been a finalist for many awards, but I've not won them. I wouldn't call myself an overachiever like that,
Oh, you've still been a finalist.
I did, yes, and that's exactly right, So there's obviously that imposter syndrome that comes with it. But it's also people around you
Mm-hmm.
that you see have achieved equally important things
Mm-hmm.
as well. And that kind of puts you in a little bit of a bubble of your own,
Yes.
because you're like, I don't know if I'm good enough to be able to do that. And it was a very hard thing for me as well. Like I say, this is my first podcast. I'm not very comfortable. I do my videos and stuff like this because I have a written script and I know what exactly I'm going to say. But when I'm doing a podcast like this, I'm having a conversation. And in conversations, you could see what areas I'm more passionate about and what areas I'm not passionate about.
Yeah.
But having said that, I always come down to the two things that I said initially is if I'm doing the right thing and if I'm out there helping people out, then I don't have to be worried.
Mm-hmm.
Then whether I'm titled as an overachiever or I'm with this great personality or I'm a shit cunt, excuse my French, but that's the perspective that everyone has about themselves. And it's what I think about myself, right?
Mhm.
And it all comes down to that. So if I think I'm an overachiever, then great. I know I'm going to be feeling really, really good about it. And this recently I was watching a video and he was talking about Buddhism. And in Buddhism, Buddha says, and don't quote me, but it's obviously a way of life. It's a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that the way you talk about people is what you have about yourself, that you reflect about yourself inside you, right? So if I say, oh my God, he's an annoying person, that means there are traits of you that are also annoying. And it's like a mirror that you're trying to put. So what you think about other person doesn't necessarily mean that it is them. It is actually a reflection of yourself, right? So if today, and it's something that you have achieved or want to achieve. So if today I go out there and say that, oh my God, you're great and you're an overachiever, which only means that that is what I want to do. And it could be yes or no. It's a very philosophical thing, obviously, if you deep dive into it. But from what the Buddhists say, that is your reflection. That is what I want to be. I want to be that overachiever, or I want to be that, great person, or I want to be able to help people. And that is why when we look up to people, we get inspired and we get this because it is a reflection of us. Similarly, how we talk about people is a reflection of us.
Mm-hmm.
So if we say that, oh my God, this guy is annoying was one part, but this guy asks very silly questions, right? There is something inside you that also asks silly questions. And that is where your mindset comes in, that every time you talk good or anything that is not great about someone, remember
Yep.
that it is a reflection of yourself that you're putting out there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you talk about good things, then it's great. You're manifesting it, you want to achieve it. And if you talk about negative things, then that's what you're going to do. And I'm big on positive mindset. I have a whole frame that says everything happens for a reason, and having those little things, tools around your life or around your, day to day, makes a big impact.
Having said that, we have that on frame. Everything happens for a reason. And the answer is always no if you don't ask. This is something that Rifa told me when he was on my podcast. He said that the answer is always, and this is something that you say, the answer is always no if you don't ask. He said that if I hadn't gone and approached him to be on a podcast, it would have been a no. Let's talk more about quotes and the importance of having these systems in your life which help you stay in the direction you're in.
Look, quotes are great. They're great when they look great on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was younger, I probably don't even remember a quote since I was young, probably something that I don't resonate to something, or I don't know, whatever it is. For you to be able, personally, to think about those quotes
Mm-hmm.
or live your life based on those quotes, there's a lot of background work that is needed, right? I can't come today and tell you everything happens for a reason, just believe in it and it'll be fine. No. And you're going to be fine now. If I say the number one problem in today's generation and economy is the lack of financial literacy, Alan Greenspan says that. And if I could come and tell you like this, like, all right, yeah, his talk is talking, whatever. There is so much that happens behind the scenes, right? It's your, like I said, physical, mental, whatever, financial and your spiritual development. But until you focus on those three things, until you have your why, until you have your vision, the quotes around you are just going to assist you, are just a catalyst towards you achieving whatever you want. You can do it without them. You can have your own quotes, or you could use the quotes around you or those, empowering, encouraging words to be able to give you that, encouragement. So quotes are great and they're a good way to put it, but there's a lot of background work to be able to, because you could hear something, and there's obviously a big difference between listening and hearing, right? You could listen to a quote and just listen to it, but if you hear it, is the difference. And that is what our internal mental and physical development does, is to ensure that we listen less but hear more. Because when we hear more, we're able to practice it. And it only comes with a lot of self-practice and self-development inside you, in my opinion.
Good to have a positive mindset, but oftentimes we are not able to get what we want and we might fail. We might be disappointed. How would you deal with that?
Great question. I think we're human beings, not that I think, I'm sure we're all human beings. And we have something called as emotion. And emotions need to be regulated. So regardless of whatever circumstance, it's about how you react to it, right? Now, today, if I say that I didn't win an award and I was very happy about it, absolutely not. I didn't win an award, and I'm not going to go into detail, but I felt really shit about it. Everything that I did.
Hope you win this one, though.
I'm sorry?
Hope you win this one, though.
Hopefully. We'll see. I'm not even here, actually, for it.
Oh.
Probably one of those awards. I've been a finalist for many, many years. But that's fine. And you realize that you need to feel to be able to deal with it. So when something like that happens, and if you feel upset, feel upset. I think it's completely justified. You have to acknowledge that you're feeling upset and that this situation was not great. And then how can you deal with that? Because if you say that, oh, I'm not upset, no, because then you're lying to yourself and it's just going to hit you harder. So firstly is acknowledging it and being like, okay, I feel this and I'm really, really upset about it. What can I do next time? And there's two ways. It's either you use words of encouragement and deal with it in a positive way, or you be like, go down towards that path, or I don't deserve it and I'm not worthy and things like this. And there's a book on my table that actually says worthy. And it's a great, great read. It's about what you think about yourself than what other people think about themselves, right? And I'll share with you two instances that have happened. Awards are one of them. But I didn't win them. But the whole panel that I was sharing the award with became my clients, right? So regardless of whether me winning it or not, I still won, right? Because I landed all those finalists as my clients. So how great is that? And that didn't happen on that night, right? At that night, I probably cried my ass off and went to sleep. And I woke up really, really depressed that morning. Completely fine. But then I acknowledged it. Okay, I'm upset. But what? I'm going to move forward and I'm going to, keep doing it. And I think I used that as a motivation for me. It may not be great and I may, be talking to myself about some things that may not be relevant. But I always say that, okay, if I didn't win it, how can I be better?
Yeah.
And I'm going to be 2 times. Yes, I'm going to be upset for one day. For those people who want to, do something, whatever, I'll do it for one day and I'll cry about it. I'll be upset about it and I'm going to acknowledge it. But the second day, I'm going to go back into work and I'm going to give in twice than what I did and then see. And every year, I've still been a finalist, and maybe one day we'll win it. But it doesn't stop me from going back again. So even if on 11th of April I don't win, on the 13th of April, 12th of April, I'll be very sad. But on the 13th of April, I'm already out there and I'm kicking goals because that's the mindset that I've created. But you only do that by so many failures. That doesn't happen only on the first time. You need to be able to see that and then see how it is, even if you don't win, right? And that is one. The second one, and it's happened with 2 clients of mine. Big clients, initial parts of our journey in our career, where, we landed a client, big money, and we lost them just because, we weren't able to manage it and stuff like that. And that was really, really disappointing because at a time where you're creating a brand and when something like this happens, you're like, oh my God. And just giving you in terms of numbers, rough numbers, obviously. I don't want the ATO to come looking for me. But in terms of rough numbers at that time, 5-6 years ago, we were talking about $50,000-$60,000 of a contract, which was a huge amount at that time.
It still is.
Yeah, it still is, and losing that is like losing a whole full-time staff for a year. And I was really, really upset. In fact, it took me like a couple of months to, deal with it and be like, okay, how can I do it to be better? And that's when you look into how you react to it. You look into systems, you look into the tools, you speak to mentors, you get the coaching. Today, that same client is a $300,000 client. You see? Took 5 years. It took 5 years of me blaming myself and being like, oh my God, this happened to me. But what I did was just be better. It's just put all the tools in place to be better. That's it. And obviously there's a lot of other external factors, motivation, your family around you, your friends, the people that you work with that support you. But that is what happens, right? And that's why I say everything happens for a reason. So now, even if I lose something or even if I don't win anything, I'm cool. That's what's supposed to happen. It was meant to be. And yeah, I think it solves half of my problems in terms of being stressed out.
I watched a podcast earlier with an Australian entrepreneur. This was on Diary of CEO. And it talked about writing down, journaling, and just having some sort of system. A few people like to do that on Twitter. A few people like to do it on Threads. A few people just like to do it in their books so that no one sees. I don't know why, but I decided to do it on my Threads. And some are very interesting because I also lost something recently. So it came to me and this was a conversation I had between me and my friend. My friend said, "Oh, you lost." And I said, "How can I lose something that I never had?" And then his follow-up question was, "But you failed." I said, "How can I fail when I learned?" Would that be fair?
100%. And like you say, when, again, very philosophical, Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb, missed out on building a light bulb 99 times. And people say that, oh, you failed 99 times until you build a light bulb. But his response was, I learned how to not build the light bulb 99 different ways. So I learned 99 different ways of how not to build it. And then finally I learned the one way. You see, it changes your whole perspective. And as soon as you mentioned it, I'm sure everyone's going to have a smile on their face if they listen to exactly what we've said. But it's powerful, right? And exactly what you said, you learn. And if you live your life like that, I think you're a winner.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is a very solid point to end the conversation. Just a couple more questions from you. First one, if you could go back in time in 2016 when you were at that orientation and you had seen the younger yourself, what would you tell him?
Well, I'm happy where I am right now. So, and that's the most important thing, right? And when people ask me that question, I'm like, yes, it's good to think about it otherwise, but I'm here now. And I'm happy where I am now. So if I am, even though I faced so much adversity, but if I hadn't gone through all of that, I wouldn't be where I am today, right? So the question that you could ask yourself is that am I happy where I am, right? And if yes is the answer, then how can I keep going on with that feeling? Or if I'm not happy about myself, I could have made some changes, but it's in the past, right? And the future is not decided. We don't know. So the only thing that I have at the moment is my present. So if I'm not happy right now, what can I do now to make those changes? I could have done X, Y, Z, 10 different things at that time, but what can I do now? And that is what I would probably pressure on, And when you talk about, my journey as, being in the war and, being, captive or, being whatever that happened in the Congo, I couldn't be like, okay, no, I don't want to do that. It was the worst part of my life. It's, completely traumatic and I still deal with PTSD and I still get medicated for it and all the rest. And I could be completely sad about it. But that situation taught me how to deal with fear, right? Today, I'm not scared of anything. Again, if I'm doing the right thing and I'm helping people out, then what am I supposed to be scared of, right? There came a time where I lost my life completely, What can I lose now? Like you said, there's nothing to lose, right? If I didn't have it, like doesn't belong to me or whatever. So that's the mindset that I try and live by. And probably the question that you asked, and I'll probably say something funny. I wish my really good friend spoke to me who came from Africa, that I would have changed, during that time. That's it, And it's just a funny thing, and I talk about it very openly that I met a friend from Africa, and I told him I'm from Tanzania, and he told me he's from Zimbabwe, and that was it. And I'm like, where's that African Union? Obviously, we became best friends after that, and we still talk till today, and he's actually in the studio today as well.
Yes.
But yeah, I think those are the things that I would, I don't want to change anything of my life, I've learned, like you said, even though I may have failed or life may not have gone as planned, but I learned so many things, all those skills, that I am where I am today.
In an ideal world, do you want to change anything? But I think the past is a reflection of what happened, and you can only use what happened before as a learning lesson. That's what I think. The past is what builds you into what you are now. So what you are now is because of those little things, those little and big trials and tribulations which build you into the person you are now. And if I talk about like the time that I met you and what you are now as a person, although two totally different people, but that was a learning lesson for me and for you. And now we're at a better place, and in many ways I would say that I wouldn't change what happened in the past, because that's what made me who I am now, and that's what would have made you who you are now. And in many aspects I wouldn't change it. I love it, and I love the struggles that we went through, and we are still going through those struggles, and we will welcome more struggles, because that's going to build our character and make us better people. And that helps us, and those things that we learn, those are the things that we impart to other people. And that's the goal in life, to make sure that what we learn, we give it to other people so they don't have to go through it. Or if they do go through it, they have someone who can actually take them through that and be like, hey, this is how you do it, or you deal with the situation, and this is how you work on it. And I think that's essentially life anyways, in a little summary.
Great.
Perfect.
Sweet.
Love it.
Good point, man.
Of course. I had to put my gem everywhere, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Thank you, Tate.
Yeah, so just to summarize that, the past is gone, the future is not in your control, so all you have right now is your present.
Is your present.
That's it.
And you make the best out of your present is by being self-reflecting, knowing what you want, focusing on your priorities. What is it that's important to you? And anything else am I missing?
Live in the now.
Living in the now.
Live in the present, you take the advantage of your present regardless of whatever happened in the past,
Yeah. And I wouldn't call it luck, but I would say that it's really great that you've had a very good, supportive friend circle that has helped you grow up so high, and you've all like uplifted each other, held each other's hands, and even just a small thing as just coming on and having that small conversation, I feel that is like so powerful. I wish I had more of that, but but I love that.
Yeah, because people out there, you want to be successful, you're fighting against teams. You're fighting with 2 people, 3 people, you're fighting with 10, 20 people, and you think you can change the world by being yourself? Absolutely fucking not. It's just not the truth. You need to have people around you and give credit to them. And every time that you achieve or someone else achieves something, it's that combined effort. So even right now, you say Samaf, and you'd probably see me on my videos and whatever. Mate, I'm only able to do that because I have such an amazing team behind me that are managing my day-to-days. The only reason I'm able to grow the business is because my team at the back end is managing the fort. So it's the people around you. And I think the people is your biggest resource, when it comes to any form of business activity or volunteering or anything that you talk about.
Ali Dhirani, thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And let's see what comes out of it.
Yeah. One thing that I had from one of my guests on my previous podcast, the episode's not out yet, but of course by the time this goes out, it would have been out ages ago. There is no full stop. There's always a comma. So I would look forward to speaking to you again.
Absolutely. And let's put an exclamation mark behind it.
Cheers, brother.